What is going on, guys? It's me here, back with another first Descendant video. And for this video, I'm going to be going over the Valby Gluttony build that I've been using. Now, essentially what this build does is it makes the mechanic around Gluttony much easier to deal with, to the point where you can actually solo the mechanic. And what this is going to allow you to do is have a much higher chance of carrying your pug runs, because currently in about 99% of cases, when you are doing pug runs, what ends up happening is that the boss ends up doing its one-shot mechanic, which, let's real quick get into the mechanic itself. So many of you guys already know this, but to quickly explain, essentially Gluttony has a mechanic where as you shoot him, he charges up, and you'll see the charge building up on his gun and some of the different body parts around him. Essentially it fills up with this pink light, and once that reaches all the way, so once the weapon on his arm is completely filled, if that tank fills up, he's going to do a one shot and wipe your entire party, and that's the end of that. Now, to deal with this mechanic, what you have to do is shoot bubbles into him. So these bubbles come out of these fountains around the map, and what you have to do is shoot them, and each time you shoot them, they go towards whatever direction you're shooting them in. But it's still pretty hard to do. You have to constantly shoot them and kind of follow them all the way through, and you have to do this with a lot of bubbles. In pug runs, people tend to just ignore this mechanic altogether and just hope someone else will do it for them. This is the biggest thing that's going to wipe your Gluttony runs in pugs. Now, if you're in a pre-made, you probably have an organized setup to where you can sometimes just skip the mechanics and stuff. So this is more so for if you're doing pug runs, or if your group doesn't have enough DPS to actually skip the immunity phase on Gluttony, then you can use this. Now, for the immunity phase on Gluttony, it's pretty similar, except you're going to see these purple orbs fly towards him, and you need to break those when they're near him. Once you break enough of those near him, he's going to basically get knocked out of immunity phase. However, during immunity phase, when those pink orbs are flying to him, if they actually get to him, his purple charge is going to go up, and when you shoot them and pop them on him, his purple charge is also going to go up. So you still have to be weary about the charge that he has to avoid the one-shot mechanic. So again, as Valby, during the immunity phase, you can handle the bubble mechanic and make sure that his arm is never charging up all the way and wiping your party out. Now, to actually use this build, you are going to need a transcendent mod called Spiral Tidal Wave. This drops currently from Molten Fortress, and that is the only thing that it drops from. The other way you can get it is by combining other transcendent modules together and hope that you get lucky with that. But if you want a good way to do it, Molten Fortress is going to be the most consistent way to actually get this mod. All right, and with that out of the way, we're going to get into the build here, and then I'm going to show you guys some examples of actually using it against Gluttony. So first thing we have here is our Spiral Tidal Wave. Essentially what this does is it's going to transform our one ability into Spiral Tidal Wave, and what this does is carries those bubbles almost like a vacuum. So it flies forward and kind of grabs all the bubbles that are nearby and it projects them forward towards whatever direction you fire the ability in. It is much easier than shooting them forward. It's almost like a horizontal tornado that kind of picks them up, and that's what's going to actually allow you to do this mechanic and keep the boss's charge from reaching full and wiping the party throughout the entire fight. So outside of this, we are pretty much going for tankiness and then necessities towards our skill cost and mana, so making sure we have enough mana throughout the fight to keep using this ability, as well as cooldown to be able to use it frequently. So with that in mind, we'll go through the tank options first here, and the first thing you're going to want to take is going to be increased HP, just for that flat survivability increase, no downsides to that. And on top of that, you're going to want to take HP amplification. The reason you take this as opposed to stim accelerant is because, again, we need mana. We are going to be casting a lot of one abilities, and it adds up. So we definitely want to maintain our mana pool as high as possible. It does give us a little hit to our shield, but shield isn't that good anyways right now, so we're not too worried about it. So take HP amplification. Now, we're also going to take increased defense, and this will synergize well with the components that we're going to get into, but you want to make sure you have a good amount of defense without complete overkill, because eventually you do get diminishing returns where this becomes not worth it. And then for this mod, obviously I don't have it fully increased. Now you can take shield conversion here and just get the extra flat defense increase. That's going to give you still a lot of damage reduction. Another choice that you can take here is to simply throw in psychological victory or auto immunity. I prefer psychological victory for a little more MP recovery, and it gives you 10.5% flat damage reduction. So that is also very good in place here. And then for the last survival mod, we're going to be taking anti-freeze solution. This is an absolute must on this build. Those bubbles that I showed you will freeze you if they hit you. On top of this, Gluttony will also freeze you if he hits you. So this gives you frostbite immunity, which means that you can no longer be frozen. You're going to be around those bubbles a lot, so you don't want to be able to get frozen by them because that could cause serious problems. So make sure you have anti-freeze solution here. It is for the frostbite immunity specifically. Now on top of this, again, we want lots of cooldown reduction. The base cooldown for this is 14 seconds per stack. You get up to 3 stacks, but you're going to have to use this ability a lot. That is because sometimes you're going to have to redirect where the bubbles are actually going, and to do that you're going to have to cast it again in a different location. Not only this, but the range on it is actually not that good. When it starts picking bubbles up, the range actually becomes lower, so you have to use this typically more than once to actually get it to Gluttony to cool him down. And on top of this, a lot of the time the bubbles actually bounce off of Gluttony from the spiral tidal wave hitting him before the bubble reaches him, and then they just start falling, so you end up having to spam it a couple times to actually get them to the finish line. So you need to have low cooldown here. So we're going to take MP conversion. We do lose some mana here, but it is a must-have for the cooldown itself. We're also going to be taking Nimble Fingers, and then we're going to be taking Multi-Talented. Now, Multi-Talented is really nice with Valby's one because it is a stack ability, so it actually synergizes very well and will apply to the stacks that are on cooldown rather than slotting to focus mods, which can be better in certain circumstances. In this case, for this ability, Multi-Talented is far superior, so you definitely want to make sure you take that. It will make it so you pretty much have 100% uptime on your one ability to be able to use it as much as you need to. And then finally, we're going to be going for skill cost. That is because we need to preserve as much mana as possible because we are going to be using our one a lot. So you're going to want to take maximize conservation. We don't need to worry about the skill power modifier because we're not building this for skill power. So we're going to take the hit there and get the skill cost reduction. And we're also going to throw strong mentality on there as well. And you definitely want to use strong mentality as opposed to enlightenment. And that is because you are using this ability so much that you are going to get much more benefit from strong mentality over a small period of time. It just becomes superior after like I think 10 casts or something, which is going to be very, very quick. So make sure you use strong mentality as opposed to increasing your max mana. And then for your grapple, you can kind of use what you want. Mid-air maneuvering is actually not bad at all because it can give you really good angles to kind of get in the air and shoot the bubbles. Like if you do shoot the bubbles up in the air, you can use mid-air maneuvering to go in the air and kind of shoot them more at a downward trajectory. So mid-air maneuvering is not a bad one either. I like using long distance maneuvering because when I'm using this build, I play it as a very supportive build and I try to go for the grapples and stuff on the boss for my team because it's not really a damage focus build. So me being the one to grapple the weak points lets my teammates hopefully do damage. Sometimes, you know, you can't pick your teammates, so they might not do a whole lot of damage, but in general, I like to typically be the one that grapples the weak points and stuff like that. And for your reactor, the big thing you're going to want here is the cooldown. You want to get a gold cooldown roll. As far as the mounting, the skill power boost ratio, none of that matters whatsoever because we are not focused on doing skill damage, so none of that has to match. The only thing we need is the substats, which is going to be skill cooldown, and the other one you would ideally want is skill cost. So the best roll here would be skill cooldown, skill cost. Now obviously I don't have skill cost. It is a very small amount. It's I think 4% with a gold roll, so it's going to give you a little bit of a reduction on your skill cost, but not enough to be a difference maker in most cases. So just make sure you at least have the skill cooldown roll here. So for your components, you're essentially going to want to just be as tanky as possible. You don't really need to focus on the set effects themselves. So I'll go through my components here. I have double max HP, and then MP recovery out of combat is also very nice to have. Sometimes you are going to be out of combat because you're going to be running around the map doing the bubbles and you're not hitting the boss all the time, so you'll get a lot of value out of that. And then for my sensor, I have the annihilation sensor. It gives a very nice chunk of defense, and you want max MP as high as possible on this, and then MP recovery in combat also as high as possible on your sensor. And for your backpack, you are going to want ideally HP and defense here, and then MP recovery modifier. That does help a little bit with your passive mana regen, so it's definitely a nice to have, but the big thing here is having a high defense roll. And then for your processor, you want to have max HP and a high shield roll as high as you can possibly get it. The other roll does not really matter here. Ideally it would be shield recovery modifier, but that does so little that it just doesn't really matter, so you just want the max shield roll here. And also, if you are still struggling to stay alive, you can come back to your sensor and look for max MP and chill resist as opposed to MP recovery in combat. Now you are going to lose some of that passive regen, gen, but you should be okay in general. The chill resist isn't going to give you a ton of extra tankiness, but it will give you a little bit to help with actually staying alive against the Gluttony boss. However, if you are paying attention to your surroundings with this boss, you can actually pretty much dodge every single attack, minus if you like have to really get in his face and you're like in a rush to get his arm cooled off, then that can be an issue where this tankiness will definitely come into play. Or if you're going to like res a teammate and you have aggro, which you really shouldn't be doing, but sometimes you may need to do that for whatever reason. And if you look down at my stats here, I'm sitting at 23,000 health and 30.5 thousand defense, so you are pretty tanky. This usually eats about 1 to 2 shots before actually taking a lethal hit, so you won't get one shot with this build ever by Gluttony, but sometimes you will get 2 shot. But it does give you that comfort room of not actually being 1 shot, so that you have a little bit of leniency in how you're reacting to things. All right, and here is an example of using this build. So I'm gonna kind of walk through the gameplay here as I do this Gluttony fight. Now I'm starting the fight by just trying to shoot his shoulder to get that weak point exposed. We actually do get a weak point exposed there, but my teammate does end up getting it, so I'm just working on getting the bubbles. And while my teammate's up there and the immunity bar isn't actually filling up, I'm going to try to get some damage down on the boss. Whenever you have a teammate on the boss's weak point, you can get damage in without filling the immunity bar up, so you can see it's still not moving yet. And you can see that kind of horizontal tornado when I throw the ability out and it's picking up those bubbles. And your second priority, as you can see here, is going to be resing your teammates if you can. So I do like to obviously make sure that the boss is cooled down as much as possible so that we don't get wiped. But then if my teammates are having trouble staying alive, I will try to go for reses, assuming I don't have aggro. Then here is the purple orb mechanic. So we're working on breaking the immunity phase here. And again, you still want to be trying to use your ability to get those blue bubbles into him to cool him down. You can see his weapon is basically halfway charged right now. Now, after that immunity phase, these fountains that spew the bubbles out actually get a little bit further away, so it becomes harder. After the first immunity phase, it is going to get harder. And then if you do have a second immunity phase, they're going to get even further away. So it does become harder to do this, but still very doable because our build has so much cooldown and so much skill cost reduction. Again, I'm just throwing the bubbles. And you can see they bounce off of him if the spiral tidal wave hits him before they actually reach him. So that's why you want to be able to cast as many stacks as you need. Again, just resing my teammates here. You can see the fountain is further away now, but you can see how fast the cooldown is with the multi-talented. You can see I tanked that hit. It is a very tanky build, and he goes down again. I think we get him here. So very good teammates. My teammates were doing a lot of damage, which is nice. But us being able to cool down the boss and make sure he doesn't do the one wipe mechanic was allowing them to be able to do that damage. So it is a balancing act of having the support from the Valby and then actually having teammates who do damage. Now, unfortunately, not every run is going to be doable. Sometimes it's just cooked and you can't really carry. The big thing with playing Valby like this is that you do need your teammates to do some damage and at least try to stay alive some. It is going to increase your chances in pugs of success by quite a lot because, again, the wipe mechanic is the big problem in most pug runs, but you can still have teams that, you know, it's just not really a salvageable run. That's okay. It happens. Try not to get too tilted about it. Eventually, if you do use this build, you will run into a group who has enough damage to take the boss out, and you will just need to do the bubble mechanic, maybe get a res off every now and then. But again, your chances of success are going to be much higher in pug runs if you are playing Valby with this build. So, and yeah, this run failed miserably. Anyways, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Shout out to my supporters on Patreon. I appreciate y'all so very much, as well as my Twitch subscribers and my supporters on the Next Time Creator program. I'll leave links to all that stuff in the description below if you guys want to support me in that way. Also, if you are not subscribed and you enjoy the content, please consider doing so. But if not, no worries there at all. Anyways, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thanks again for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.